thank you for being here today with your team. Want to thank you as well for helping to set up a tour of our new state police barracks in York. It was very informative. And one of the things that I came away with was that I was surprised that the number of troopers assigned to this location has not increased in years. Given the population increase in York County, specifically in those areas that rely on PSP policing service, it's probably about half of the district, as well as the increase in the volume of traffic on Interstate 83. What formula does PSP use to determine the number of troopers assigned to any one barracks?
Thank you, Senator. So there are two main ways that police agencies usually allocate resources. One is by population. So an example of that would be an NYPD census study that says there's X number of people that live in precinct Y, and this is how they should be staffed. There's also a formula that goes by allotted time, which is what the state police uses. So to your point about the allotments scheduled or stationed at that installation, that would go against our staffing formula. How does that work?
And when you say allotted time, you mean response time from a call?
Obligated time. So what they do is they basically we have an incident code that delineates everything that a trooper does, from sitting on the side of the interstate or monitoring a traffic post to responding to a violent crime, a crash investigation, everything in between, a domestic, a criminal mischief, a retail theft. And then based on the tabulation of how much personnel hours are allotted to handle that incident, we become statistically valid in saying that this incident classification code requires this much. Now, 45,000 square miles, 88 different installations. The system is not perfect. To go by a population model is, I think, complicated for a whole other host of reasons, which is why I agree with the decision to stay with the obligated time formula. But there is variation. So an example I would give you is if you're in a fairly urban area that has a hospital nearby, you can turn around a DUI arrest, stopping in to get blood and then getting back out on patrol much more quickly than a more rural area that doesn't have a phlebotomist working within the county. And that's the complaint that we get in terms of the ability to drill down and really track the amount of time that it's taking a trooper at a specific location to handle the same classified code. It works in the inverse from an urban environment, so a non-reportable crash takes X amount of time to handle. That same non-reportable crash that occurs on the Schuylkill Expressway or the Parkway in Pittsburgh may require exponentially more resources during rush hour. Our records management system that we've gone to will allow us to better track that, but from a real practical standpoint, when we graduate a cadet class with 88 installations, there is a finite amount of cadets that we can put out at a specific barracks to become new troopers. Referring to that
well, that actually
visual
leads
aid,
me into
the next question.
The next question, which is, have been reading articles about the difficulties of recruiting individuals to come into service. They attribute it to a lot of things, everything from negative reporting in the media to a desire to have more positive interactions within schools and neighborhoods. And so, military used to send officers and personnel into schools to educate and help with their recruitment. Is that something that PSP is looking at? I know we're talking proposed tax credits, benefits, but while they're enticing, what other efforts are you taking to improve with recruitment so we can up the number of those individuals wanting to serve our communities?
Thank you for that question. So our most recent testing cycle for individuals to sign up closed December 31st, and there was 1,057 individuals that signed up to take the test. That number is usually north of 8 to 10,000. Out of those, we just finished oral board interviews last week. We're at about 650 of those 1,057 that showed up. Now, the hope in that is that from recent cadet classes that I've attended, the people that we're putting out I have the utmost faith and confidence in that they want to be there and they want to do the job, and we're providing them the best training, which I would never come before here and advocate any sort of attenuation of the training or any of the entrance standards. Turning it briefly over to Major Klein, we recently convened a recruiters conference in State College. Major Klein and I drove there. Out of all the things going on, we felt that it was important to address that organizational segment and let them know what a priority it is for us. We've made a promotion to create a third division headed by a captain in our Bureau of Training and Education to try and tackle some of these issues. We believe there is a fiscal component. Obviously, we need the funding to put cadet classes through. We need the support of the legislature, people here, and the governor to go out and say that policing is a noble profession. But I would say that we're looking also in April, we're attending a conference at West Point to talk about recruiting Generation Z, because the military, if you've read any open source reporting, missed their recruiting mark within the last year. I think there's a lot of, from the quoting of an article I read, the military recruiters say they see that they're revered, but Generation Z might not really see themselves as being in that service of the military or law enforcement. It's our job to not only be competitive with the salary and a benefit package and a retirement, but we're fighting, I would say, somewhat of a generational issue where, in the next 25 years, people are predicting that they'll change jobs 4 to 5 times. We're talking about once we don't have a problem with attrition once we get our people on the job generally, because they come with a model that they're going to work for 20 or 25 years with us. So those are some challenges in the recruiting environment. Turning it over to Major Klein to talk about all the additional initiatives that we're spearheading.
So I think just events we would consider for recruiting. Now, those could be, visits to college, job fairs, high schools. We also have a partnership with our Office of Community Engagement with our recruiters, where we go into diversified communities and talk to people and explain what it is the PSP does, what our job can offer somebody. The Colonel likes to say an instant ticket to the middle class, home ownership, things like that are an absolute benefit for people. So, we recognize recruiting is a challenge that, facing law enforcement across the country, not only our department, but a lot of things the Colonel has set in place, again, last week with our recruiting conference, shows the importance that we all feel in recruiting people that want to be service-minded and represent the Commonwealth.
Very much appreciate that. And I will tell you that policing is a noble profession, and understand that there are challenges across every sector. We had the Auditor General here talking about how he's pushing into universities to reach out to those accounting and finance majors and get them before they make decisions upon graduation, to educate them about those opportunities that are available. I think that's encouraging and appreciate that work. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.